Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 142 of the Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is the trusty, dependable, hilarious, and vivacious Marcus Stewart.
Oh my god, I've literally never been described as vivacious, but I'll add it to my business card.
You know, I call it like I see him, okay?
Professionally vivacious.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus, you must be running out of space on the business card. You're a man of many talents.
Yeah, it's like a business tablet.
It's carved into stone.
Yeah, exactly.
You pull it out of your back pocket, hand it to someone.
I should probably update this procedure at some point.
I mean, it would definitely do wonders for your posture.
That's why my back's killing me so much? Jeez.
Well, we have assembled here today to talk about the best games of 2019 because it is currently December 26th, which happens to be just a few days away from the end of the year, at the end of the decade, really.
We made it!
Did we? Maybe the decade was the years we had along the way.
Maybe yes? I guess. I was like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, literally, yeah. All right. Let's all give ourselves a hand. We made it 10 years.
Yay!
We're all still alive. We did it. We made it. What a journey.
Some of us might be dead inside, but, we're still kicking.
Our husk will carry on.
Our what?
Our husk.
What does that mean?
Your husk.
Because
we're dead. We're dead inside, but our body, our shells.
Okay, I was hearing you say musk for some reason. I was like, what? Okay, we should get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, which is our dissection of the Brady Bunch, looking at the past decade of Brady Bunch episodes. And it turns out that there haven't been any Brady Bunch episodes this past decade, so I guess we'll talk about games instead.
Yeah, Plan B.
I mean, Plan B was the Brady Bunch plan. The B was for Brady.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So
I thought it was a bunch, but
God damn it. So you're the guest. Let's let you go first. What are you saying is one of your top? We each brought our top 3 games of the year.
Should we do our honorable mention first? Do we have those?
Let's. So first, before I answer that, did you order your list at all?
Yes, we'll say I know what my game of the year is, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think the other two could go back and forth, honestly. I still haven't decided, but I can make it up on the spot.
Okay.
But I know I have a game of the year, absolutely.
Okay. I propose that we each do our number 3, then number 2, then honorable mention, and then number 1.
Okay. I got you. I feel you.
Okay.
Alrighty. So we'll say my number 3 this year is, drumroll, Control.
Ooh, okay.
Did you play Control?
I did.
Did you finish it?
I did.
I love this game. I was obsessed with it. And that's kind of the story with all 3 of these games, is that these were 3 games that, I play a lot of things at all times, multiple games, literally at all times. So I'm always kind of jumping around. But these were the games where, when I played them, I put everything else down until they were done. I was obsessively playing them. And Control, I think, one, it's the best game that Remedy has ever made. I've played all their games. Especially coming off of Quantum Break, which I thought was okay, but my least favorite thing that they made. And this just kind of came roaring back for them of we're Remedy and we're back. If you're not familiar with the story, the basic plot is that you're this woman named Jessie Faden who's looking for her brother who has been lost for years, decades, and you track him down to this government agency called the Federal Bureau of Control.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you go in there and you run into all kinds of weird interdimensional stuff, because this bureau pretty much investigates I don't want to say paranormal, but interdimensional entities that...
You could say supernatural, things that transcend normal.
Kind of almost like a Men in Black kind of thing, but less goofy and more like if you combine like the X-Files or something like that, like Twin Peaks, and you early on become the new director of this bureau through things that happen, and we won't spoil. We're also not going to spoil anything on this podcast,
No.
by the way, just in case you're afraid when we talk about anything. But yeah, basically, and this isn't a spoiler because this literally happens like in the beginning, and they also said it would happen in all the marketing. But you become the new bureau or the director of this bureau, and you're pretty much just going around this building trying to find your brother who you believe is being held there. And
while
I'm a
also
sucker-
containing like a horrible threat that emerges.
Exactly. And you'll notice with all three of my games, they're all similar in that I'm a sucker for games that take place in a single setting that you kind of get to know intimately. Like the entire game takes place in this bureau, and it's so weird. Like, it's one of my favorite settings in recent memory, and it's crazy because when you look at it, it just looks like a lot of like kind of sterile offices and building, but that kind of like works to its benefit because like the bland setting kind of juxtaposes all the weird stuff that's hiding in and all the things that are happening, because the building is more or less alive because it shifts constantly and can move around. It's hiding all these different like these things called objects of power that are basically like possessed objects that have all these crazy abilities. Like, it's got a bunch of floating people from the ceiling that are all possessed by the entity. What were they called? The Hiss?
Yeah.
Which is like the main enemy that you're fighting, and they're popping up at random times attacking you. And it's got all these weird characters that you're like the different people that work there, and they all have their own weird little stories, but it plays it the way the game kind of plays it straight, but still has a little bit of weirdness to it. Like, it almost reminds me of Metal Gear in that way, where like Metal Gear plays it straight 80% of the time, but it has enough like weird quirkiness to it that doesn't break that tone. It kind of like just fits. And Control has a lot of that, especially the recordings that you get from like Dr. Darling, who's might be the best character of the year, honestly. He's pretty up there. He's pretty great. But I also love Jesse. I think Jesse's a really good character. And the combat I love, because it's pretty much, if anyone's ever played PsyOps, the Mindgate conspiracy for PS2, where Jessie has all these supernatural powers where she can like have telekinesis, and she can throw things, and she can possess other people and make them turn against each other. She can make a shield, she can fly, and the abilities are super fun, and when you upgrade them, you become so overpowered. It becomes this power fantasy. Some of the fights would be really hard, but I kind of like that they're hard because you have so many abilities by the time you get to like the mid and late game that like, and you can combine them. Like, you can fly and throw stuff and use shields, and like I think the encounters just made me feel like a god. Like, I would walk in every room, like pick up a desk and just throw it at 5 people, then pick up their dead body and throw it at another guy, and then possess the strongest guys that he takes out like 5 other dudes, and like it's all happening like that, and it's super intuitive and fun. And then exploring that place it's kind of sort of Metroid-y, the way you kind of move around, not like totally, but it's elements of like, some areas you can't get to until you get like a key card or whatever,
or a certain ability or whatever. Yeah,
and like the combat combined with how much fun exploring that place is, because every place you go to, you're just kind of like, what is happening here? And also, I think this game has the best like logs, like stuff that the scattered logs that every game has. Like, you read pieces of paper, and like I think it has the best what would you call it? Like, I guess
lore?
like lore, I guess. Yeah, that's the word I'm blanking on. Basic word. Lore. I read everything in a game like obsessively, and I try to do that with most games. I really like story in games, but some games are better than others at that. Like Death Stranding, for example, is terrible at that with their emails and stuff like that. But this, because every little like the journal or like little official document is so fascinating.
Yeah, it contains like it's more than just like exposition dumps or like lore building tidbits. There's also like literally everything you pick up has some sort of character to it. Like,
yes,
like there's a story there. It's not like an early example that you come across. There is a section of the house called the Dead Letters. And you'll find, like, if you pick up like little documents there, each of them is basically a little story of like someone who's suspected of having a supernatural encounter. And so like, and that ranges from like the ravings of a lunatic to like somebody who's just like, yeah, there was something really weird about that like Kennedy assassination. And it's just like, you know, little things that give you insights into not just the world, but like the people who live in it. And it makes it much more engaging.
And it gets really weird, like, and some of them are really funny. Like, one of my favorites ones, I don't know if you got this, Jack, but there's the guy, because the idea is that a lot of these logs are talking about, like, the objects of power that they go out in the field and find, and they kind of document, like, oh, this is where we found it, and this is what it can do. And, like, it can be, like, a mundane object. It could be, like, a lamp, or, like, a signpost, or a plate, or something dumb like that. But it's got, like, this power imbued in it. And there's one where a guy's talking about how, like, we have this airplane that we think is, like, there's an object of power somewhere in the plane, but we don't know which part of it. So, like, one poor employee had the job of dismantling the entire plane and having to go part by part, like, down to the last screw to try to figure out which part of the plane is the weird part. And he writes this journal just complaining about it, like, super passive-aggressively. And he's just, like, you know, saying, like, oh, he's like, you know how many parts make up a plane? Because I do. He's like, I had to count every screw, and he's just going on and on. You feel so bad for this guy. He goes like, oh my god. But like the stuff like that, like there's so many logs like that are really funny or just interesting, like I said, world building stuff that I was like, again, every time I read something, I was so like I'm on board for this. I will read anything. And that combined with like the weird little videos, like the Threshold Kids thing, like the weird kid puppet show that's like really twisted. And then of course the Dr. Darling videos, who is like, Dr. Darling's like he's like the head of, like, I don't remember what his official position is, but he's basically the head of science,
yeah,
more or less, at the Bureau. He's played by the actor who played Alan Wake.
I didn't know that.
And you know, yeah. So another thing is that, so he played Alan Wake, and the director, like, you know, the director Trench is the actor who portrayed Max Payne, like the voice of Max, and he's kind of doing the Max Payne voice in those little monologues when you watch his videos. Like, it's pretty much the Max Payne voice. I'm surprised you didn't know that. I
haven't played many Remedy games.
Oh, okay.
So
you wouldn't recognize them, really, like, you know, like they've gotten a little older, especially Max Payne guy. But like that Max Payne voice, you kind of hear it, and then Dr. Darling, like, I remember, like, that's Alan Wake. But I think this game is incredibly creative in its combat, and especially its puzzle design. Like, there's stuff like the ashtray maze that I think is like so creatively designed, and especially like the boss fights against the objects of power are so cool and they're so distinct from each other. I will say, if I complain about anything about this game, the two major hangups I have with this game, and they kind of go hand in hand, are some of the boss fights are a real pain in the ass, but it's usually the optional ones. Like, I remember the anchor fight was one that I was ripping my hair out at, and the plant one was pretty irritating too. And then compounding that is that the checkpointing is pretty rough, because there's no auto saving, really, or at least there is, but not like in checkpointing. There's hard checkpoints, like a kind of like an old school game, and if you die, you go back to that checkpoint. And a lot of the boss fights have like a pretty long path to them, so if you die, you gotta walk that whole path to get to them. And a lot of those times, those paths are littered with enemies, so I mean, you could just run by them, but like it's irritating to have to keep doing that. Like, I remember the plant boss was like a series of having to jump down a bunch of pits to get back to him, and and because he was so hard and it was kind of cheap.
Confession, I just cheesed the plant fight.
I've heard people say that the plant boss broke for them at one point and didn't he didn't start attacking, like, when the fight started, and they just like wailed on him until he died. I never got that.
Yeah, if you go over to like the farthest to the right, like, pillar or piece of cover, you can basically just pop out, shoot him a couple times, let your gun recharge, repeat, and he just doesn't do anything.
See, like, I wasn't so fortunate. See, I had to beat him the old-fashioned way. I had to dodge all the damn tentacles and try to, like, fly while also he's throwing, like, the bomb things at you, and stuff's falling from the ceiling. You're trying to grab stuff from the ceiling to throw at him. He's a real piece of work. But yeah, I was not blessed enough to get the broken plant fight, because I was furious by doing that. So like that was my. So those are my two big hangouts of the game. Like if those two things were better, like if the checkpoint was more forgiving and the bosses were better designed, this is already a near masterpiece, and this would be maybe one of the greatest games ever made, because it's like, and it's still like, I think everyone should play this game. It's phenomenal. It's so much fun, and just the world and the story that they're telling, I think like is so well done and engaging and creative, pretty much from beginning to end. So that's my number 3.
Okay.
Control.
My number 3 is Fire Emblem Three Houses. The game
3 for 3 houses.
Yeah. The game that made Fire Emblem mainstream. Fire Emblem.
I would argue.
No, Fire Emblem
Awakening did that.
Awakening, like basically saved the franchise from doom.
Oh.
Like
at least in the West.
No, they were gonna straight up just. That was like the last game for Fire Emblem that they were gonna get.
Oh, I thought it was. I always thought it was like for us of like, oh, if this isn't hit in the West, we're just gonna keep this in Japan, basically.
Nope, it was gonna be done. And but it sold like, I don't know,
gangbusters.
It sold so many more copies than it was ever expected to, that it basically revived the entire franchise.
It was kind of hard to find for a period, depending on some stores you went to.
Yeah. And then they did Fire Emblem Fates and Fire Emblem. There's Echoes, yeah. And Echoes was not great. But then they kind of came back to the Switch and a console game, because basically, historically, Fire Emblem in the West has been a handheld series, outside of 2 games that released on the GameCube. I
have one of those.
I think actually there might have been one on the Wii or Wii U.
There was one on the Wii.
Yeah,
I forgot what it's called, but I've seen it. The Wii U never got one because the Wii U didn't get it.
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't really do well on consoles. In fact, like I think the GameCube games are some of the most valuable games you can get for GameCube.
They are. I have one of them. I believe it's Path of Radiance.
Yeah, that is one of them.
I bought it at GameStop for super cheap, and then I found out later that it was worth a lot.
And so Three Houses is like the next crack at trying to do a console Fire Emblem game, and really it completely revolutionized how that series handles gameplay and handles its kind of core elements into a format that's both way more accessible and way more interesting, and opens like a lot more storytelling possibilities. Because basically in old Fire Emblem games, the way that you increased how, like, to give kind of an overview, basically it's a turn-based strategy game, and you have all of your units have names and stories and personalities and kind of their own things going on. And you have to like defeat evil, that kind of thing. And in past entries, like especially in when relationships were first added into Fire Emblem, basically the game didn't really tell you how to foster connections between characters. And so you would eventually find out that you had to have characters fighting next to each other, or like you'd have to have them like holding, like kind of paired up, or something like that. And that's how you would get relationships. While in Fire Emblem Three Houses, it's much more set in stone. So instead, players are able to run around kind of a hub world, talking with different characters, giving them gifts, doing little errands for them, like finding lost objects, inviting them to dinner parties, stuff like that. And that increases their affinity for you, the main character, and that helps you get to know them better, and you can also then recruit the ones that you like into your Fire Emblem house. And that is good because basically there are 2 phases of the game. There's the first part where the hub world is basically this school that you run around. You become an instructor at this school for young medieval nobility, or warriors, or etc. And as you go through kind of the storyline, you choose which of these houses you want to align yourself with. And there's like the blue one, the yellow one, and the red one.
Which one did you pick?
Red one, because my lesbian main character had to follow Edelgard.
Okay. As you would.
The golden horned princess. Or empress, sorry. And so it has a branching storyline. So depending on which house you choose, the story changes drastically. And there's also this whole a lot of the story also depends on like who you're able to recruit. Like there are some characters you absolutely can't recruit unless you are in that house. But the majority of the characters you can, and really those characters and the way they interact with both the main character and with one another really makes the game super special. And I think that making those mechanics more digestible is both a huge achievement because they are pretty complicated interactions, and also the key to kind of this game's success. Like there are definitely some things that I would nitpick. Like I think in the series, when this game moves forward into its next entry that it's 100% going to get, they should keep that hub world mechanic, and maybe spin it off into more of a management sim with that hub world. That would be really cool, managing more aspects of your base rather than just existing in a centralized location. I think it would be really cool.
You could build a new classroom.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the idea that you could get resources in battle to then use to build up your base is, I think, a really cool one. It's a good idea. I think everyone likes doing that. And
you send your students out to go get wood, and then say build your own classroom if you want to learn.
I mean, yeah, I would be down for that. And I think it'd be cool if they added like an element of diplomacy, where like, hey, if you manage things right, you can actually do like. It'd be cool to be able to do a pacifist run of a Fire Emblem game where you like don't have to kill anybody. Because you manage the diplomacy right.
The thing of diplomacy, like I haven't played it yet. I want to. I'm gonna get to it. Just slipped by me. But so the three houses, they all exist in the same like monastery, right? It's like Hogwarts basically. Yeah. Is there like rivalries between the houses?
Oh yeah.
Like do they interact?
Oh yeah.
Any particular?
It's like Hogwarts. So like they all compete in various like challenges throughout the school year.
Does that play into the gameplay? Like, are you actively like?
Yeah. So
like
different characters will have like birthdays, or like there are special school events that you take part in, and you like fight on behalf of your house.
Do you get like points like Hogwarts? Like, hey, 5 points for the Golden Deer, and then at the end of the year, the house with the most wins something.
I don't think
the one with the least dead students wins.
I don't think so. I think maybe it makes it easier to recruit some students if you win.
Okay, like they'll be more attracted to your house.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Like, this is the winter house.
The winter house. Yeah. It's just a really solid, really good game, and it's, I don't know, it's one of the first turn-based tactics games to really get big since like Final Fantasy Tactics. I know that there are other ones like Advanced Wars out there, but like this game
XCOM.
This game was gangbusters.
Yeah, like when it came out, like again, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I do enjoy Fire Emblem. The last one I played was Fates, and I loved Fates, Birthright specifically, and I love turn-based strategy in general. Like I love Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, that kind of stuff. So and when they announced this, I was like, oh, Fire Emblem on like Switch, like sign me up, like that's perfect for that system. And I'm so happy to hear that it's even better than I thought it would be. Just the buzz around it. Like, I know this is a lot of people's game of the year. And this was the one games I've played a lot of games this year. This is the one where I like, if I could sit in a hyperbolic time chamber and play through it before the end of the year, it would be this one. And honestly, based on how long it is, I probably would need a hyperbolic time chamber. But this is the one where I was like, if like my one kind of like, if I had one gaming regret, this was the one that I was like, man, I wish I'd gotten to that.
Oh, okay.
But I will definitely play it in the new year and, decide which house I'm going to be. But
it's my number 3. I really want to do another playthrough and do the Golden Deer house, the yellow house.
Yeah.
My boy Claude just seems like a good dude. And that's kind of why this game succeeds so well, is because you get to know all of the characters at the monastery through the first half of the game. So when the game turns everyone against each other, it becomes really heart-wrenching. Like, because you're like someone who helped these kids like learn and grow, and now you have to like fight them to the death.
Man, sounds good. Fire Emblem.
You
did it again.
You have to make kids fight to the death. Sounds
Finally.
good.
About time somebody went there.
About time someone pitted kids together in a giant death match.
Yeah, haven't seen it before. But
I am going to have to go to the bathroom, but keep going with your number 2.
Okay.
No, don't worry, Unabridged Gamer. You're smack in the middle of it. We're on the first number 2 of our double top 3.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Alrighty, number 2. My number 2 is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I am a huge Castlevania fan, especially of Symphony of the Night. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and one I've replayed more than a few times. I love it. And when they announced the Kickstarter for this game, I was so on board with it. Like, Koji Igarashi, the father of the Symphony style of Castlevania, basically making Symphony 2 without the Castlevania name. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I remember first playing this game at my very first E3 back in 2016. Yeah, 2016. They had it there. It was like one little booth by Xbox in the Xbox area, just one booth. And Koji Igarashi himself was standing there, just kind of watching everybody take turns playing it. And I played a really, like in hindsight, looking back at it compared to the finished product, a pretty rough build of the game. If you played the game, it was just that opening ship level, and you fight the little boss at the end. And being like, okay, like this is getting there, but it's not there yet. Like the look of the game still wasn't like fantastic. I was kind of worried about that, and I remember even thinking like, oh, I kind of just wish they went back to sprites, but maybe like HD sprites, because I don't know if this kind of 2.5D thing is working. But I was like, but I can kind of feel the DNA, and then also having Igarashi himself like standing right next to me as I was doing it was a lot of pressure. And then I took a picture with him, and I wanted to tell him that like I love you. Why I loved when you flipped the castle upside down. That was great. Yeah, like I played this game, bought it at launch, and again, like Control, I was obsessively playing it. Like I put everything else I was playing down just to run through it. I ran through it within the week, with like 99% of the castle discovered. Hey, by the way, Jack, my number 2 is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
All right.
Talking about that now. Yeah, like I played it obsessively, got like 99% of the castle unlocked. I have no idea what I'm missing, to be honest with you, or I don't remember. But pretty much this game is just Symphony of the Night 2 with some cool new stuff in. Like it pretty much does everything I wanted from a Symphony spiritual successor. Like it plays identically. It has a similar look. Obviously there's no Dracula or anything, but like the giant castle thing that you're in is huge and fun to explore. Like all the different rooms and like areas are really cool, and like you're always excited to get to a new spot to see what crazy weird thing is going to come at you, whether it's like a weird desert inside of a castle, or like the weird realistic cats that come out of the portal and like paw at you. Like there's so much weird stuff. And I think that the game, like the gameplay, like the shard system is really cool, where every enemy you kill drops a shard that has like a specific ability tied to them, and you pretty much absorb that ability. Like you're more or less like Mega Man almost. Like Mega Man to like the 900th degree, where like you kill someone and you get their power, and then you can customize your loadout based on all these different powers. And there's like different categories. Some are like traversal based, some are offensive, some are defensive, and then the more you use them, you can upgrade them and make them stronger if you find something you really like. And there's so many that you collect. And even if the ones you don't use, they find ways to use them. Like you can break them down with like the alchemist or whoever it was, and like use them to make other stuff or money. But like that game encourages experimentation in a really cool way, where I was constantly just trying out every new shard. And like the game also allows you to make multiple loadouts of things, so that instead of having to, yeah, it's really useful too, because some of those shards are like kind of game critical, like super critical, like moves like a double jump so you can get to higher areas, or like just the stuff that's used to get to the areas that you couldn't access before. So instead of having to manually like, oh, I gotta switch on my like weird light bouncy thing so I can get through this weird little narrow corridor, I'll just make a loadout that just has that equipped, but it has my main stuff. The only difference is that one ability, and then you just swap to it on the fly so that you don't have to keep going in the menu. And I love that they add that. And you can unlock like I think like up to like 6 or 8 different loadouts, so you can really just have something for everything. And the game looks cool. It's got a great look. The soundtrack is really well done. I think the boss fights are great, and it does that. It has that Castlevania hook, like that digital nicotine, where like every time you get to a new area, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna explore this. Like you think you're gonna put it down, you're like, well, let me just get the one more floor, and you unlock the floor, or you make some sort of breakthrough. You're like, oh, I know what to do here, or I have this ability now, I can go back to that other place, and you just keep going because you want to see more of that castle. It's crazy, and the game has a lot, like between the cooking and the alchemy stuff and the library stuff. And again, the one nitpick I have with it is that some of the puzzles can be a little too vague. And I'm thinking about the train pass thing, which if you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. Trying to get the ticket to get on the train is a pretty, like, I had to look something up. That's the only time I had to look something up to figure out what to do. But other than that, I think that this game is both a relief, because there was a period where it seemed like this could be another Mighty Number 9 situation. Very similar Kickstarter stories. I mean, the Kickstarter wasn't as like nearly as wrought with like setbacks as Mighty Number 9, but you know, it had been stewing for a while, and the times they did show it, like, this looks like it'll be okay, but I don't know if it's quite there with Castlevania, and then having played it pre-release myself. But my god, I could not be more relieved and impressed with what that final thing wound up being. Like, yeah, that it's the best Castlevania game in years.
So I guess my one question is, like, is this the kind of game you can really only enjoy if you are a fan of classic Castlevania?
Not necessarily, especially in this generation where there's so many Metroidvanias like that has been so in vogue. Like, I feel like if you could point to one genre, especially in the indie scene, that has the highest number of like versions of it, it's the Metroidvania. I mean, there was like a period, I think it was this year or last year, where like 3 or 4 Metroidvanias came out like the same week, like big ones. Like I think it was like Time Spinner and like Guacamelee 2 and like something else all came out in the same day or the same week. It was insane. And that was the other thing that was working against this game. It's like there's so many Metroidvanias, and a lot of them do really cool things and kind of shake up that formula, whether it's like Guacamelee or Hollow Knight or Ori, that like is going back, not to going backwards, but kind of like saying like, hey, we're gonna do Symphony of the Night again. That could be fun, but like, can it do enough new stuff to kind of hang with people that have really kind of shaken up that formula? and it does, like, it's better than a lot of those games, honestly. And I'm a huge sucker for Metroidvanias. I'll pretty much play any Metroidvania. And for this to kind of like be a throwback in some ways, but still have enough new stuff to where it puts it above a lot of the contemporary ones, is pretty amazing, honestly. To still kind of arguably be the king of that style again, kind of retake its crown, so to speak, is great. It's insane. But yeah, like, I think if you don't really, like, you know, if you played Symphony, it's more like if you played Symphony, you would appreciate the references to Symphony. Like,
Okay.
there's a lot of, like, and maybe, like, stylistically, you're like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Like, this is, like, that one room in Symphony, or, like, some weapons are pretty much, like, straight up, like, copies of something you do in Symphony. But, you know, even if you have no affinity for Castlevania or any experience with it, like, it's just a great one of those, I guess.
Okay.
So if you're a fan of that style of game, like Metroidvania, you should absolutely give this a try. I think it was one of the games that I had a genuinely hard time putting down until it was over.
All right, that's your number 2. My number 2. See, I didn't come into this ordering my list, so I'm kind of trying to do this on the fly. My number 3 was very solid, but the competition for number 1 and number 2 is very close for me.
You had to flip a coin?
I am going to go with... I'm going to go with Control as my number 2. Control, like...
I've heard of that game.
I'll be brief because we did already talk about it. Control was just absolutely a breath of fresh air. I didn't really have any expectations going into it, but it immediately kicks things off and becomes very interesting very quickly. There are so many little things, and you compared it to Twin Peaks, and I think that is very apt. The game's there's like something stilted and weird about everything in the game, and in a way that feels like artistically intentional. Like, even the way Jessie talks and like absorbs information about the world, you're just kind of like, oh wow, she's really taking this in stride. This is very odd.
Talking to her imaginary friend.
I actually, speaking of that,
which I love that, by the way.
I thought that this game reminded me of Deadly Premonition a lot. Like, there's just like a weirdness and richness to the world where I feel like I'm only really scraping the surface of what the characters already know about what's going on. And I loved it. I loved the you said it was like Twin Peaks meets X-Files setting, and I think that that's a really good comparison. I loved I loved that it was a very mundane looking setting where almost everything was some kind of eldritch horror. Like, there were just these unknowable and unfathomable beings imbuing these objects with power or using them to some kind of unknown arcane purpose. And it was just fascinating. Like, the main setting for this game, like you mentioned, is like a giant living house that has some kind of plan, and none of the people who work within it know what that plan is, and basically they just kind of go about their days hoping it's nothing sinister.
Which is crazy, that because to them it's like normal,
right?
Like, it's like they all are aware that this house is like weird and shifts and moves around, but they all just kind of work around it, basically. Like, again, going back to the emails, you'll get emails about, like, I remember one where a guy was like, hey, like, I know this house moves around a lot, but is there a way we could tell it to stop moving the bathrooms? Because, like, it's getting really irritating to, like, have to look for the bathroom.
Like, yeah, and it goes about the business of, like, okay, how would, like, a boring government bureau deal with these absolutely bonkers creatures and things. Like what would that look like? And it looks like a guy being assigned to, it's your job to pull apart this plane part by part to figure out which of these things is the magic part.
Bringing a whole landfill to, like, an entire landfill to the place.
Yeah, like
because they were like, something's in here, gotta recreate it. Just take the whole town landfill.
Yeah, it's crazy and cool and weird in an ambitious way that we don't usually see games go. And I think the last time I saw a game that was that felt as free with its imagination was like BioShock Infinite, right? Like that, in that setting, it was like a colorful city above the clouds with all kinds of weird stuff going on underneath its pristine surface. And in Control, it's a boring, bureaucratic building that slowly unfolds into just the most bizarre and insane thing that you could possibly imagine. And it doesn't do that in a way where it's like, oh, it's all in the main character's head. No, it's like actually happening because there's like horrific powers beyond our mortal comprehension at work. And that's cool. It just so happens that those powers beyond mortal comprehension do things like make motels that teleport people using light switches.
Refrigerators that you have to stare at.
angry
you'll basically die.
Refrigerators.
I also want to say, I wanted to mention
demons.
I wanted to mention this before, but even though everything in the game, like I said, like everything looks really mundane on the surface, and like pretty much the game, most everything is kind of gray for the most part. But I think the game gets around that because by using, like, it has a really cool, like, bold use of colors where, like, it'll flood the screen regularly with, like, bright reds, which are usually like the color of the hiss, and that's how you know they're showing up. It's like things start going red, or like the times when you talk to or not talk to, but you get the messages from Director Trench and it's like blue, and they do like cool mixed media where like you see the live action Director Trench kind of superimposed over the gameplay as you're moving around. Like that, like, just artistically, that's a really cool look.
Yeah.
And it gives the game like a style, like a distinct style to it that kind of plays into its like that, like, again, that eldritch horror thing.
Yeah, it's a game that constantly keeps you like on your toes. Once you get too used to like one aesthetic, it switches you into another one. Like the live action, like that should be bizarre, right? Like you almost never see live action in a video game, but you get like these Director Darling videos, and it's like jarring and weird because he's not a video game and everyone else is. Right?
Yeah, and I will say, like, Remedy does use live action a lot in their games, like Alan Wake, like with the Night Spring show, and then of course Quantum Break went full with it with the straight up TV show that played. But I think this was the coolest implementation of it since Alan Wake, where like Alan Wake was just kind of a thing in the world, like, hey, there's a TV here with a live action show that you can watch. I mean, like Control has that, but like I said, like using it stylistically, but like the superimposed Director Trench monologuing about the objects of power as you're going down a hallway, and it like the way it blends with the like the in-game world, and like again like that bright blue that he's surrounded by with the gray like dark, like you're on like this monolithic like bridge with like a bottomless pit underneath. It just looks really cool.
Yeah, and like the effects of like using different powers just looks powerful and like visceral.
And the sound effects too.
It's so...
The sound design is fantastic.
good.
Like, the sound it makes when you suck something with your telekinesis, like, they're like, sound. Like, I never got tired of that. Like, it just sounded so cool.
Like, Control... When everything is firing on all cylinders in Control, it's like it's like a perfect video game. Like, I do not think that... I can't imagine a better moment in a game than the ashtray maze. Like,
that's one of my favorite moments of the year of any game, is that whole sequence.
For me, that was when the entire game clicked for me, and I was just like, oh, my character, I finally know what I'm doing with this character. Like, I know, like, all the powers that she has and how to use them effectively. And I just, like, bull rushed through that section and I felt like a living god. And it was amazing.
And it's even better because did you ever get there before you're supposed to get there and try to go through it?
I didn't try and go through it before I was. Like, I got there and it was just like, oh, I'm not going to do this.
See, I tried to do it. I just assumed, like, oh, maybe you can just get through this. Maybe this is an optional thing. And you can't. So, like, the whole time, like, okay, like, I guess something will happen or I'll get an ability that'll let me go through this thing. I spent a long time, longer than I probably should have, because I was like, there's a secret here. Like, there's a puzzle here that I got to figure out. And you really can't until the game lets you. But, like, the solution, which we're not going to spoil, is amazing. Like, what you have to do to get through it. And, again, it's one of my favorite sequences of any game this year.
I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to think of sequences I like better in games, period.
Wow.
Like, it was good. It was real good.
Mm.
And it was, like,
Definitely.
just, there's so many weird things going on in the background. Like, to me, I think that the game probably should have ended with that. Like, the final boss encounter
it's kind of towards the...
like, didn't really do much for me. I was just like, oh, the game's over now. And that's the biggest flaw I think it has for me.
Yeah, like I said, like, the bosses are probably the weakest part of this game.
Like
they're okay, but a lot of them, and most of them are the optional ones. Like, a lot of them you don't even have to do, which kind of helps the game. And that you can just skip right by, like, the anchor stuff. But, like, I don't think any of them are, like, genuinely great. Some of them are like, oh, this was fine. And then some of them are like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, some are tolerable, some are just like, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last boss is okay, but yeah, I agree. Like, it's like, maybe if it ended on the Ashtray Mage and then just all the end game stuff happened after that, minus the boss fight, it would probably be a stronger finish. But
yeah, I don't know. I get the feeling like the game's not going to be done until its additional content comes out.
Which I'm super psyched for, and I'm annoyed that it's coming to PS4 first, because I played it on Xbox.
I played it on PC.
So I almost want to be like, should I replay it on PS4? Just give me an excuse to play the game again. Because I really want to see... Like, I don't play a lot of DLC, honestly, even for games that I really like. I just have a hard time kind of going back, because I'm always trying to play the next thing. But this is one where I'm like, I cannot wait to play more of this game.
Right. So that's my number 2. What's your number 1 of the year?
Number 1 of the year. Here we go. That's music. That's a trumpet, I guess. It is Resident Evil 2, the remake of Resident Evil 2 that released way back at the beginning of the year in January. And this game is about as close to perfect as a game can get. Like, I struggle to find anything bad to say about this game. So I'm a Resident Evil fan, and Resident Evil 2 has always been my favorite of the old school style Resident Evil, like pre-Resident Evil 4. I've always loved 2. I love the setting. I like the idea of the dual campaigns that change the story depending on what order you play in. And yeah, like, I've always loved 2 the most. And this completely redesigns 2, because it basically turns Resident Evil 2 into Resident Evil 4, at least gameplay-wise, but retains everything about 2 that made 2 great, while modernizing it in a lot of really smart ways, and making it terrifying. Maybe, like, terrifying again. Like, I played Resident Evil 2, back in 98 when I was a kid, and it scared the crap out of me. And then playing it, God knows how many, like, what, almost 20 years later? Or over 20 years actually now, as an adult, and being scared out of my mind. And that's impressive. Like, it is, I don't know, did you play it, Jack?
I haven't, no.
Okay. Like, right off the bat, it's a beautiful looking game. Like, it's running on that RE engine that they've been using for like RE7 and Devil May Cry 5. It's a great engine. Everything in this game looks stunning. Like, the character models, the zombies look disgusting, and the way they the way they move around and blow apart when you shoot them. The police station and the city looks just immaculate and terrifying. The sound design does its job because it's just like they make that police station from like the sound design to just like everything in it. Like you do not want to be there. Like I just want to get the hell out of here. It's just you're just on edge at all times. And obviously swapping out the tank controls for the behind the shoulder Resident Evil 4 style makes it the best, obviously a great playing game where even when you're facing like multiple zombies or Mr. X, who we'll get to in a little bit, you feel confident that you can hold your own because everything just controls well. You're not fighting the controls like you were back in 1998. You're like, okay, like I can weave past this zombie and aim and shoot its head off, probably. But even that is challenging because like the zombies move around in like a shifty way where like even though they're really slow, they're really hard to hit sometimes, which I don't know how you describe it. It's like they're moving really slow. You think it'd be easy to pop their heads off, but they have just enough like erraticness to their movements where like you'll miss and like move at the last second. You're like, oh damn it, and then resource isn't super scarce, but it's scarce enough to make a missed bullet feel like a genuine loss. And again, going back to like, I love games set in one setting. And even though Resident Evil 2 does leave the police station and, go other places, like a bulk of the game is that police station. And like the map that they've redesigned does wonders for making that area so much more manageable to get through because like it is one of the best maps I've ever seen in a game in general because it tells you everything that you need to know. Like it labels every door, every locked door, and then has the symbol because like Resident Evil 2, if you ever played it, you get different keys that are based pretty much on like card suits like clubs and spades, and it tells you that it shows the symbol like, hey, this is the club door. So like if you find it, you always know. And it tells you if you've been in the room or not already, like, and it tells you all the little items, like, it's like, it could not be more helpful. And it like, which is a stark contrast to the original game. And it didn't make the game easier, like it didn't ruin it. Because it was like, it made the game difficult in the way that it mattered and not because of like, oh, this is a terrible map. Like, right. It let the things that are genuinely challenging in a good way shine even more because now you don't have an excuse in terms of getting around. And it's so tight. Everything controls well. Like the puzzles are still really fun. Going through both campaigns is still a blast, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of like solving the same puzzles again as another character, even though they're supposed to be kind of acting parallel. The voice acting is good, but also retains that like endearing cheesiness that series has always had, especially the 90s games. Especially Leon, who's still just the biggest dork in the world, or at least pre-Resident Evil 4 Leon. Rookie cop Leon. And then, of course, the star of the show for me is Mr. X, the persistent enemy that shows up in the game later on and is maybe the most terrifying thing of any game this year. Again, where and they did a really cool thing with it because in the original Resident Evil 2, he shows up, but he's not a persistent enemy. He kind of just shows up for the most part in like scripted moments, like he'll show up and chase you and you got to deal with him. And 2, he's just always around, and he's an independent entity that has his own AI, and he's constantly patrolling the house trying to find you. And he just acts on his own. Like he's not. Because I always wondered, like, does he only show up when you're nearby or anything? But like, no, like someone that like no, like if you like were to break the game and lift the camera, he's just moving around, patrolling at all times, no matter what. And you always hear him, no matter where he is. Like, I mean, if you get far enough away, you can't hear him anymore. But most of the house, like his stomps, have the craziest noise radiance. Where like it always sounds like he's right next to you, no matter where he is, which is terrifying. Because he'll be in a save room, which is the only place he can't get to. Though sometimes he'll open the door and peek his head in. And which is scary as hell because you think he's gonna come in there like he's gonna break the rules of the game. Like this is supposed to be the safe haven, but he'll like I think that's a great bit where like he'll open the door and peek his head and then give you a heart attack and then just leave because then you're afraid to leave the room. Like is he just waiting out there now? But even when he doesn't do that, the sound design, like you just hear him like boom 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 boom, and you're like, is he upstairs? Is he on my floor? Is he like a mile away or is he like right there? And you're like very slowly creak the door and then try to make a run for it. But if he hears you, like the moment when he sees you and he just starts doing his like Terminator speed walk to you, and also he's basically invincible for the most part. Like you try shooting him, can't do anything. You can shoot his hat off for an achievement. That's about all you can do to him. So like you're always trying to run from him, and I think like the game's already terrifying before he shows up, but then when he shows up, it almost becomes unbearable at times. Like, because it almost becomes suffocatingly like terrible. Because now you're afraid of just moving around. Like once you like when you're in a house, when you're in a station long enough, you kind of get used to the zombies. Like, okay, like I can deal with them. Like, you know, the lickers are a pain in the ass, but I could deal with them. And then he shows up, and you're like, I don't want to go anywhere. But I have to get across the station to get to this next room for the next, like, to get the story. And I gotta try to get there without him noticing me. But I can't tell me, but I always hear him stomping. He's just omnipresent. I think that they just design-wise is a great thing. But yeah, like, it is a great marriage of my two favorite Resident Evils, 4 and 2. And like I said, like, I can't find anything wrong with it. I really can't. Like, I was obsessed with it. I played, you know, both campaigns back to back. I even played some of the extra stuff, like the extra episodes. It might be the best remake ever made of any game, honestly. And there's been some really great ones, but in terms of like a top to bottom just reimagining of a game, I'm trying to think of one that's better than this. And I am so psyched for the Resident Evil 3 remake coming in April. I mean,
Shadow of the Colossus might come close, but
that is a good one. But it doesn't fundamentally redesign the game, though.
Yeah.
It just kind of makes it look nicer, and they added a modern control scheme, but that's about it. Like, the bosses still behave the same.
Right. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else on par.
Yeah, because even, like, Link's Awakening this year was more of a graphical facelift, and, you know, they made, like, the inventory manageable, but other than that, it's pretty much that Game Boy game in terms of design.
Yeah.
Where this is, like, this honestly feels like just a new game, like, even remake, kind of, like the changes are so substantial. Like, this is pretty much a brand new game.
Right. All right. Well, my number one pick for 2019 is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
Yeah, I like that game.
Honestly, like, when I think back on all the games that I played this year, I keep coming back to Sekiro. Like, I know a lot of people struggled with the controls and kind of adjusting to the game style of Sekiro, but after, like, it was kind of like a Dark Souls moment. Like, I was terrible at Dark Souls until I got the hang of it, right? And that's kind of how I felt about Sekiro. Like, it wasn't until the game clicked for me that the combat in the game is not supposed to be Dark Souls or Bloodborne.
Oh.
And like, Bloodborne is a game all about, like, dodging and attacking and, like, knowing when to like, pull back and go back in. Sekiro's about, like, Akira Kurosawa, like, samurai sword fighting. Like, you're not like pulling back and going back in a fight like that. You are, once you're in it, you're in it. And it's kind of a do or die, very deadly type of combat.
Yeah, it's very aggressive. Like, aggression is the key to victory. Like, being, like, kind of like being defensive like Dark Souls will pretty much get you killed.
Right.
90% of the time. Like, that game forces you, like, no, you gotta come after them, like, hard. Like, a lot, like, it's really about, like, especially the boss, it's about, like, overwhelming them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of both being aggressive, but also knowing when to block and when to try and parry. Like, parrying in this game is, like, the most important thing, because it's what's going to leave enemies open to, like, a counterattack and let you get in that damage.
Very satisfying parry, too.
Yes, it's super satisfying, and it's also very forgiving. Like, I think somebody crunched the numbers, and like there's a decent amount like window. It's kind of like in Dark Souls how you got invincibility frames by rolling. There's a generous window for your parry to actually land, which makes the game, I think, a lot easier once you've kind of adjusted your mindset for how you're going to deal with combat. But like the things that stand out, like with Control, I talked about how when that game is firing on all cylinders, it's like a perfect game. I think with Sekiro, it's less about when the game is firing on all cylinders versus when you're firing on all cylinders. Like, when you're able to click with it and just, like, mow through, like, an entire area that was giving you trouble, like, when you first tried to go through it, it feels amazing. When you... and one of my favorite things... to back up a little bit, one of the best fights in all of Bloodborne is in the DLC. There's a boss called Lady Maria, and people love that boss because it's basically putting your character on even terms with a boss. And it's the kind of fight that goes back and forth, and you're basically both hunters using your abilities as best you can to defeat the other. And it's a very challenging fight. It's very good. And that's what a large chunk of the boss fights in Sekiro feel like to me. Like, you have the... well, that and, like, just memorably tough and engaging boss fights. Like, Lady Butterfly, for example.
Yeah,
like,
I love that fight.
Like, it's very difficult, but once you are able to kind of nail it down, and much like the rest of the combat in Sekiro, once you're able to nail it down, it feels like a sword dance. Like you're weaving like some kind of like intricate ballet with your opponent, right? Because like once you kind of know their attack patterns, you know when you can kind of get in a parry, when you can dodge like their projectiles.
Or then you realize that, like you said, going back to being aggressive, like, again, especially if you're used to playing Dark Souls like I am, and like I played Bloodborne, I love Bloodborne. Bloodborne's the only From game I've actually beaten. I'm still playing Sekiro. But like, you kind of get you get in the habit of like being defensive more than anything. And then by default, especially because a lot of the bosses, like any From boss, when you first fight them, they seem like insurmountable. Like, how am I supposed to beat this thing? And you kind of let them come at you because you're blocking most of the times. You're like, I don't know, like, what is the opening I'm supposed to find here? Because he's going crazy. And like, once you kind of, it's almost like conquering a fear. Like when you get the fear of like, I'm just gonna swing at this guy. Like I'm just gonna come at him and just hope for the best. And then a lot of times, like you realize, like, oh, like you hit them enough and they'll like get stunned, or they'll like you'll break their little attack pattern or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. Like that game, I feel like that game teaches you to kind of step into your fear and just like no, it just teaches like, no, go for it. Like just go for it. Like it'll work out. And I think that's what I like about it. It's a very different philosophy, and I know some people that like Dark Souls like better don't like that. Mm-hmm. That it pretty. So I've heard the argument that the difference is that the Soul games at least kind of let you play the way that you want to play, or approach bosses the way you want, whereas Sekiro is very much like you have to play that game on its terms.
Right, you have one main weapon, and you have to use that if you want to win.
And you don't really level up in the traditional sense. Like I like what you were saying before about like going back to a previous area and like killing dudes. It's not even in the same way of like Dark Souls, where like Dark Souls is more like straightforward, like, oh, you're literally leveled up and you're stronger, so like you're just killing guys because you're stronger now, so like you're one-hitting guys that took forever before. Whereas Sekiro, I mean, you can increase your attack power, but it's not enough to where like you go back to an old area, and I have, to like grind or whatever, and like you're not killing those guys any faster, or maybe you are kind of, but like it's still about like you just have to out parry and out aggressive attack them, because they can still like they'll still tear you up, and like it's pretty much like your upgrade is your skill,
right? You're going
through them. Yeah, like you're going through them faster, not because the numbers went higher, but because you're a better sword fighter.
And honestly, what I love about Sekiro is that it's built around that, like, that concept. Like, you're not supposed to start out the game and be good at it. Like,
yeah,
in the like introductory like scene of Sekiro, you're like escorting like this young boy. You're trying to get him away from like this invading army that wants to use him, and you get into a fight with Genichiro. And Genichiro,
who was the worst thing ever. By the way, his boss fight is my god.
He like that first fight, like you can
on the tower.
No, the first fight like at the very beginning of the game.
Oh, okay, yeah, the first fight.
You can even see like Sekiro's like stance is kind of wobbly and uncertain, and like you are supposed to not be good at the game because his skills are rusty at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. Can you beat him? Like, if you were to replay the game with all the skill you've accumulated, can you actually, like, since you're better, do you know if you can actually beat him, or are you just supposed to lose that fight?
You're supposed to lose, but you can beat him, but you don't win the fight. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like you can take his health to 0, but you won't win, like, story-wise.
Right, yeah. I think you get a different cutscene.
Okay. I wanted to know. I was like, I don't know if he could, like, maybe get his health down, but he'll do, like, maybe some crazy one-hit kill thing that just hits you no matter what, because the game said so. I always wanted, like, I wanted to go back once I beat the game. You're like, okay, now I'm better. Let's see how I do against this guy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then fighting him again in the middle of the game is one of the coolest encounters, because you're like,
that's one way to put it.
All right. I've got my skills up. Like I know how to fight dudes. I've killed a couple bosses. Time to fight this guy again. And you're like, I know personally that I was like feeling really good, and like my first try, I did it. I killed him.
Wait, you beat him on your first try? In the tower with the lightning stuff?
In the tower. And then I'm like, yes,
you are some sort of Super Saiyan. That is not.
But then he gets up again.
Oh yeah.
For the second half of the fight, I'm just like, oh no.
Did he?
He killed me like immediately because I had used like all my resources.
I thought you beat the whole fight in your first time. I was like, really? Like, I was thinking, like, even after the mid-fight change, you still figured that out? I was like...
I was not prepared for that.
I was like, what horseshoe did you have up your ass when you were playing? I was like, But yeah, like that... So, my thing was, like, I was stuck on his first form forever, and then finally beat him, and I was like, I did it! Oh my god, I finally passed this fight! And then, he becomes Lightning God Man, and I was like, oh no, and I think that fight's a cool fight, but I think that might have been the most infuriating moment of anything this year, when I thought I beat him and then he's not. I was so deflated, like, oh my god, like I don't even know what's coming now. Like, I've been training for the first half for so long. That's all I know.
See, that was me with the Guardian Ape.
I'm stuck on him now. That's what I'm on. That's what I'm on right now. Yeah.
Like I defeated his first form, but man, that second form just completely changes the attack pattern, and like becomes just like the shoe comes onto the other foot, right? Like it's like you were the aggressive one, and now it's the aggressive one.
See, here's the thing. Like, so I haven't finished this because I got to the Guardian Ape and just could not figure out. I was like, this guy is too erratic. He's fast. He's just all over here. What am I supposed to do? Like, I know there's a trick. I'm just like, I just cannot decipher this right now. And I walked away for a few months to play other stuff. And I've every now and then would dip back in, try my luck, and get destroyed. I'm like, okay, I'm not there yet. And I've recently, in the last week or two, gotten back into it for real. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this another real shot. Like, get my skills back. Like, went around, grind, like, killed a bunch of dudes to kind of get my rhythm back. I've been fighting him for days straight, but I've had a breakthrough where I finally got to his second form. And again, it was the thing where I realized I had to be more aggressive than he was, because like we were saying before, like, he's intimidating because he's just
big and
doing all this, and And he's so weird. Like, he's just all over the place. And you're like, where am I supposed to find an opening with this guy? And then you realize, like, if you really just get in there, he can't hit you because you're all over him, and he'll be missing. And then he has that stun state where, like, fall over. And then he becomes less scary. Because you're like, okay, like, it's not, again, it's like getting over that fear. Like, okay, like, you kind of see behind, you see, like, it's like the Wizard of Oz thing where you see the little guy walk out behind the big projector. Like, okay, like, he's not that bad. And then I finally got to the thing, and it's cool. Like, the animation where you, like, climb and, like, do the shinobi thing and cut his head off. You're like, and I was like, I did it! And then, but then I knew something was wrong when the fog didn't lift. And I was like, this is supposed to go away now, right? And I was, like, standing there, and I was like, I'm gonna walk towards it. And then he gets up, and I was like, damn it. Oh, so I'm stuck on, but I will say, I know I can beat him now because I've consistently gotten back to that second form, so I'm better. And I've been fighting it enough. I feel like that form is a little bit easier because it's a sword, and it's like you've been fighting a bunch of sword guys. So I was like, okay, like I know how to like parry a sword.
It's just so serpentine. It's weird.
It's very I feel like he does a sweeping attack that hits your legs that you can't block. And I don't know if it's just me or if you can't block, but I feel like he does like a low. That's okay. That's what I was gonna try next time. So I felt like this one movie does. Like I feel like it's always hitting me, and I know I'm blocking. So it's like maybe I have to jump. I can't tell if he's hitting me really low or if I'm just screwing up the blocks somehow. But I feel like I was like, okay, like I feel like I can get to this guy. I feel like I just need to get to him with enough health flask to just kind of like outlast him, basically. Yeah. Because like I've been doing the same thing, like just getting in there and just going wild. But he does that like terror thing that kind of pushes you away from him. Really getting to the nitty gritty of this fight. But yeah, that's just so people know, like that's my hurdle right now is that ape fight.
And then to me, it's a game that is defined by these big one-on-one conflicts, like that are just so momentous and like powerful and are difficult. Like they're gonna like they inscribe themselves on your mind. Like there's a fight later on, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you fight someone who literally has all of the abilities, or almost all of the abilities, that Sekiro has, and it is one of the coolest fights. It's like watching two ninja samurai fight each other, like at the height of their abilities. And is
this like a Shadow Link, like Zelda 2 kind of fight?
No.
Like that kind of idea?
No, it's not. I mean, kind of, but not the way you're thinking it is.
Okay.
And it's just really cool. Like they're throwing out firecrackers and like doing fake out attacks where it's like trying to like psych you out and make you mistime your block, and like it's just a cool back and forth of just blows upon blows. Like they're using the thing that prevents you from like healing, and like it's all kinds of like crazy tricks and nonsense, and it's great.
Yeah, one of my favorite fights in terms of teaching you a lesson about how the game works was the one boss where all he does is just come at you constantly. Like he just comes at you, and it basically teaches you how to parry. Like, because the only defense for that is that you have to parry. Like, you can't out-block it because he'll just break you through your meter. You have to literally parry every attack on time. And, like, again, it seems impossible because he's coming at you so fast, but you play enough and you get time it where you're just like, ching, 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 and you realize that's the way to beat him because you basically break through his block because he's trying to get through yours, and you basically tire him out, and then you go in.
Oh, it's such a cool feeling when you finally clicks.
Yeah, like, because I was trying to come at him like normally, like I'm trying to come at him, and you're like, okay, clearly I cannot do this. And then when you finally like again, and then you get better at parrying because of that fight, because it teaches you like the value of parrying. Also, that boss is terrifying. Like I hate the design of that thing. I think it's the scariest looking thing I've ever seen. Like when I zoomed in on him after I was like, what is that? Like that thing looks creepy as hell. It's like Voldo from Soul Calibur times 20, basically. Also, that giant snake. Hell of a giant snake.
10 out of 10 giant snake.
First time you see that thing, oh my god.
It was a terrifying experience. Yeah. And I have to give a shout out to the final boss for being literally I think it was like the perfect culmination of the game. Like, I know that there are a lot of people who have struggled with that final boss. I
Struggle with a boss in Sekiro. I don't
I
believe
beat him on my first try.
Oh my god! Look at this bird. Look, it's just first try, Jack.
Like I felt so
First try,
vindicated.
Jack.
I felt so vindicated. Like walked out.
And you really beat them on the first try, not like the first form.
No, really
like,
beat him on the first try. Like I walked out onto this field and I'm just like, yeah, I'm ready. I beat the optional boss. The optional boss almost made me break a controller, but the final boss, yeah, it was another one of those back and forth, like almost even footing fights where like you and that final boss are pretty much like you can do everything the other one can, or at the very least you are equipped with with all the ways to deal with whatever they can throw at you. I think this game like excels when it's just like two humans against each other. I love that.
Yeah, which is funny because that's one of the complaints people have, is that it's not fantastical enough. Like you're fighting dudes a lot of the times.
You know what?
But...
I was just like, this game is amazing when you run a sword through a guy and he gets up like a minute later and begins summoning lightning to kill you. If that's not fantastical enough for you, and like giant monkeys that decapitate themselves aren't fantastical enough for you, then I don't know what your deal is. There are multiple snake gods in this game. There's an entire city full of fish people. Like
you fight a witch.
I'm not gonna give away the final boss, but that was one of the most horrifying things I've seen in a video game.
That's terrifying. Like I said, the weird Voldo thing is just freaked me out. Like I was just unsettled. Like I just did not like looking at that thing.
I thought the final boss was gonna be something completely different, and I like got to that cutscene and I was just like, oh, what? Oh gosh, oh no, oh no, why?
What is this?
Why?
I can't wait to see
amazing.
It eventually.
It's perfect. It's honestly, in retrospect, it's absolutely perfect for what Sekiro is, and I think there's not really any other game like Sekiro out there. Like the closest comparison is like other From Software games, but like it's also not like any of their other games, and it's really cool and interesting. I wish it got DLC.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, like in a lot of ways, it's like the antithesis to the traditional From Software experience.
Yeah. That's what I like about every From Software game that's come out post Dark Souls, is it pushes a similar formula but in completely different directions that asks for different things from the player, and it's really interesting and cool to watch that genre that it kind of that From Software kind of dominates evolve.
Yeah. I want to see what Elden Ring is.
Same.
With George R. R. Martin. It's going to go even further in the aggression in that you can't block or dodge. You can only attack. You're just planted to the ground, and you just have to hit them you got to hit them before they hit you.
Well, I mean, I have to imagine that it's like some sort of like I would imagine Elden Ring is like based on Norse mythology. That's what it looks like from all of the like trailers and stuff. And
it's probably an action game.
I mean, probably an action game. There was like I tweeted something recently about there was another Ring related game. Oh yeah, From Software has another game that they released in like 2000 called like Eternal Ring or something like that. So I wonder if it's going to have like callbacks to like one of their obscure titles before they made it big.
This is technically Eternal Ring 2. Are we going to get a Kingsfield sequel?
I've always wondered if those are worth going back and playing.
Probably for like the historical aspects of like just seeing their early stuff. Because I know I've seen footage of like Kingsfield, and you can kind of see elements of like what become Souls games, just in terms of like the level design and the crazy creatures. Like you kind of like, oh, the studio always had that kind of knack for that.
Yeah, I wonder what really clicked for Demon Souls.
Also, that rumor that Bluepoint is making a Demon Souls remaster.
That'd be cool.
I want to see if that ever. Never finished that. I only played. I didn't stick with Demon Souls. That was before that style, obviously took off, and I played it because it was making noise of like, this is crazy and different and hard, and I tried it, and I was not ready for that kind of game at that time. But Dark Souls was the one that clicked. I've always wanted to go back to Demon Souls now that I've played a bunch of these games to see if I can do better.
You probably could beat it now.
Yeah, I like that. It would be a nice kind of like closure. Of like, cause I bounced off that game pretty quick.
Oh,
like I played a bunch of the, yeah, like that game structure, like it's like you go into like they're all like designated separate levels and not one interconnected world. So like I tried all the ones that were available to me multiple times to see if there was one I could get through, and just none of them. I didn't beat a single one, and then I was frustrated. It was just like, what? I have to go get my experience when I die. Like, what? That's who would like this? This is ridiculous. Like, how am I supposed to progress if I lose all my progress? This game's hard.
So dumb. It's never gonna catch on.
I don't even know if I thought that. I just thought because I knew people liked it. I was like, I don't see the appeal. Like maybe I'm just too crappy, but Dark Souls was the one. And I think because it reminded me of Zelda, honestly. It reminded me of old school Zelda, of like, you're kind of being dropped, like, you're being dropped in the world and said, figure it out. Go explore.
Okay.
And
which, I don't, do we need to have a discussion about which game we, like, can agree on is, like, number one for 2019?
So we would be debating, I guess, our two number ones?
Or, like, maybe we could just compromise and say Control.
I mean, I guess that's the only game we both have on our list, right? Yeah.
I mean, we've been recording for over 2 hours, so maybe it's like just calling it a day is totally fine.
I could live with that unless you really. I mean, it wasn't on my list, but I also am playing Sekiro, and I love it, but I haven't finished it. But I'm a good ways in, so like, there's that. You haven't played Bloodstained or Resident Evil or Outer Wilds.
I have played Outer Wilds.
Oh, okay. Did you finish it?
I didn't finish it. It was one of those games, okay. I was like, I played it for about like 3 or 4 hours, and then I was like, I need to be in the right headspace for this, and I'm just not.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. You got it. Like, that's a good way to describe it. Like, I got to be in the mood for this weird kind of puzzle solving, basically. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could say, let's Control.
Yeah, it's game of 2019. Hey!
Control game in here. Hey, fireworks and confetti. Cue that dark. Oh man, I wish we could put the video. I would like put the music video with Dr. Darling when he's like that weird music video. Did you find that?
I loved that. That was amazing.
That's so good. It's so good. Like, I would play that. That would be the celebration song. Is this that video?
Gosh, what was that song even called?
I don't even know. It might have been an original song for the game. I know that game has some licensed stuff, but there's also some original stuff. I want to say that was an original song. If you just go on YouTube and probably just type Control Dr. Darling music video, you should be able to find it. But yeah, that's also one of the highlights of that game, is finding that video.
Here, I'm actually going to put that on the stream right now. We're going to watch it together.
All right. Oh, I can see it. Oh my God.
Okay.
It's a good song. I remember. I watched the video multiple times while playing the game. God, Casper Darling. If we did like a top 10 characters, I can't hear the music.
Oh no. Oh, because you're.
But the dance. Yeah, I guess because I'm in a different plane of existence. But the dancing, oh my God. I would love to know like the backstory of like filming this. Like, what if this is all like one take and they just said, hey, do what you want, just dance, figure it out. God, it's such a good character.
I love it so much.
This must have been so much fun to film.
Also, I just want to say, Darling becomes more naked in his videos as they go on.
He becomes very naked.
He has a surprisingly good body. Just saying.
He's got a dad bod.
You know,
He's rocking
surprisingly good body.
For, well, probably
For like a 40-year-old scientist.
Well, you know, when you're sitting in the same room, probably does some yoga, stretch out, and some sit-ups or something. He might have a Pilates ring in there. He's playing Ring Fit Adventure.
Gosh, I want to play that so bad. I'm actually going to get that with the money my grandma gave me for Christmas.
Can your grandma give me some money too? Your grandma likes me, right? But yeah, I genuinely want to play. I've heard enough good buzz about it, and I enjoy exercise. I want to play that.
I want to go on an adventure and get fit.
Oh yeah, with the buff dragon and fighting. He's pretty ripped. It's a top 10.
I also really want to know what the story of that game is.
It's about getting swole.
God damn it.
That's what it is. The greatest story ever told. Getting swole.
Your character model just slowly gets more buff as you play.
Yeah, it's like CJ from San Andreas.
Okay, where can people find you, Marcus?
You can find me on the Twitter at MarcusStewart7, and you can also find me very soon on Twitch because I'm going to start streaming soon. In the very near future, I got a Twitch page. There's nothing there yet because I haven't streamed yet, but it's coming in the very near future. It's at Marcus Streams Games.
It's not Marcus Streams About Games?
No, it doesn't make sense grammatically.
Yeah, but you have like Marcus Writes About Games, Marcus Talks About Games.
Yeah, but the about doesn't fit here, so I had to make I had to
try
to
sacrifices.
Make it fit. Mostly, yeah, the about had to get cut, but I was able to still stay on brand. I got so like Marcus Streams Game, the old MSG, on Twitch. Keep an eye out. I believe the first game that I'm planning to stream is a big one because it is Star Wars Jedi.
Oh, you'll have to let me know what you think about that game.
You can watch me and see my live reactions.
So you can find Marcus on those places. Thank you very much for being on this show, Marcus, and giving me so much of your time. We've been streaming for 3 hours now.
Hell yeah. Marathon!
Yeah. Thank you, viewers, for sticking with us for so long.
Thanks, guys. I could not see any of you guys if you were saying anything to me directly, especially when Jack was gone. I couldn't. I'm not on Twitch. I'm just recording on Skype, so I can.
To the Twitch channel.
I didn't know I could do that. You didn't say anything about that.
Yeah, twitch.tv/riverboatjack, where we stream best games. Period.
See, I'm still getting used to. I'm a boomer guy. I'm still getting used to Twitch and stuff. So I didn't think to do that. So if you had a question or ask me anything or have any kind words, I'm gonna assume everyone's really nice and say thank you for putting up with our nonsense. And also, I would love to know what you guys thought about our picks and what you guys were playing. So hit me up on Twitter. What are your favorite games? Maybe it's something we didn't say.
And maybe on Twitter you can apologize to some of our boomer viewers, because we do have some.
Yeah. Okay, boomer. In a good way.
God damn it.
See, all you have to do is change the inflection and it becomes like a compliment instead of like, okay, boomer. It's like, okay, boomer.
Your inflection somehow made that worse?
No, it's not passive aggressive at all. It's like, yeah, boomers. Bring on the boomers.
Okay, well, we'll go with that.
Coming from a millennial.
Let's see. If you enjoyed this show, you can find us over on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod, where we do a lot of our super secret special episodes and cut content. Hint, some of this episode might get cut just to have a functional, reasonably long podcast.
Ooh, release the cut. Release the Gardner cut.
No. The cut content will be available on patreon.com to anyone who supports us for $1 or more per month. And on top of that, you can get access to our cool chill fun editing streams that also double as AMAs by donating $5 or more per month to the Patreon page. All of that money helps us keep going and build the show into something more fun and bigger and cooler. The idea is eventually we could be doing some fun, like, additional streams, and also working on some more dedicated video content. There are some video essays I would love to put together that are just kind of waiting in the wings because I can't spare the time. And yeah, so you can do all of that over on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. And you can find me on Twitter at Riverboat Jack. You can find the show on Twitter at bestgamesperiod. And we are also on SoundCloud, Libsyn, iTunes, most podcasting apps, Spotify, and all that jazz. Please follow, like, subscribe, all of that. It does genuinely help the show, and it makes me feel good to know that I'm not just shouting into the void.
Exactly. If I can offer a Z-list celebrity endorsement, Jack does great work, and you should support her in all of her endeavors because
I have a quote of endorsement from professional video game voice actor Marcus Stewart.
Yeah, I did one game and I was in it.
You certainly were. And let's see. Oh, also we have something that might be coming out soon. Do you know when that super secret pilot episode is coming out?
Oh, I don't know. I was going to talk to you about that. We're going to figure that out. Maybe do you want to in the new year?
I mean, this episode will be coming out in the new year.
Yeah, maybe first week of January we drop it. A little double whammy.
Next week?
Yeah, I guess that's next week. Whenever that is. I mean, yeah, it's ready. Yeah, we have a should we say what it is?
I would love to. I've been super excited about it.
All right, guys. So, you like anime? Of course you do. Do you like Sailor Moon? Damn right you do. Who doesn't? So Jack and I have a new podcast, one of those fancy watch-alongs where she and I will be watching the entirety of Sailor Moon together, and the name of the podcast is A Podcast by Moonlight.
Boom! Boom! Yeah. Perfect name!
Boom!
Drop the button!
Yeah!
We're in the big leagues now.
And yeah, we are watching Sailor Moon up to, I guess we're starting with, season 1, however it's broken up, based on what we were looking like on like the website we were watching it, or Hulu or whatever. But yeah, we're starting with that. We are watching, I believe it's the English dub, but it's not the original English dub that aired in the 90s. I guess it's like a redone English dub because they call the Usagi by her Japanese name, because I believe in English originally it was Serena. And the thing is that Jack, you've never seen Sailor Moon prior to this.
I haven't seen a single full episode of Sailor Moon. So I have no idea what I'm in for.
And I basically am new because I watched Sailor Moon when I was really young, when it aired in the States in like the early 90s. But I don't remember a single thing about it, like in terms of the plot. I just remember some characters. I remember thinking Tuxedo Mask was cool. And I just remember inexplicably liking it, despite it looking girly as hell. But I was like into it, but I don't remember anything about the actual plot. So this is pretty much fresh for me. And also I'm just curious to see if this show is actually good now that I am an adult with taste. I was like, is this a good show? Because, it's obviously endured for decades, much like Dragon Ball Z. Like, it's got a huge fandom and they keep making more of it. So yeah, Jack and I, we're embarking on a Sailor Scout adventure. And the first episode of A Podcast by Moonlight, I guess, will drop we'll pick a day, but I guess it'll be sometime next week. So
let's do it.
We're starting 2020 strong. We're gonna be doing some anime weird poses and like having our like sexy transformation sequences with our ribbons turning into boots and that crap. Talking cats. Tiaras that you throw at people and it kills them in one hit.
Are we gonna do like? Are we gonna live stream watching the episodes? That might be fun. I don't know if we can legally do that. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Do you want to skirt? You want to skirt the law? I don't know. We'll see. That might be a little hard just because like availability. Like I kind of been able, like it'd probably easier because like our schedules are different. So like I kind of it would be easier if I could just watch the episodes in my own time.
Yeah.
Like when I have free time. But I think for now, I think we said every episode will be us discussing 2 or 3 episodes. Like we're gonna kind of like review them basically in batches, and pretty much if you've ever watched if you're a Giant Bomb fan, if you've ever watched All Systems Goku with Dan Reichert and Jeff Gerstmann watching Dragon Ball Z, this is a similar thing to give kind of like some context, we'll say, but ours is better because it's Sailor Moon
and it's Marcus and Jack, and you can't get us anywhere else except some other podcast sometimes.
This is the only home, the exclusive home of Marcus and Jack is this podcast. Nowhere else. You can't hear these voices anywhere else about anime on the planet, talking about the greatest anime ever made. Maybe we'll be the judges of that.
I don't know. After the first couple episodes, I have no idea how this podcast is gonna go.
It's gonna be entertaining. We can guarantee that at least. So
yeah,
join us on this fight against evil by moonlight. I was trying to quote the lyrics of the song. I think I botched it.
Yeah, it's all good.
That's the other thing I remember is that the theme song is really good.
Follow us on Twitter to see when that is happening. Marcus Stewart 7 and Riverboat Jack will be tweeting about it, I'm sure. And
that's the number 7 in my name, by the way. Just so
yes, 7 is your middle name.
Yes. I was named after the movie 7.
Oh no!
My parents were big fans of my parents were big fans. They loved the twist at the end.
All right. On that note, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you to everyone listening and watching on the stream. It's lovely having you. And
we did it.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah. See ya.